Hi there. In English, there are hundreds of confusing verbs, words, and phrases which you may find in pair. For example, especially, for, since, so, and such. How about and what about, must, and have to. It is important for you to know what time, when, and where can you use these confusing verbs correctly. So today I'm going to talk about the verb must and have to. Both of these verbs used to talk about obligation. So let's get started with have to. Have to is not an auxiliary verb. It is often grouped with a modal verb in order to make more convenience, but indeed it is not a modal verb. It is sometimes used as a main verb. However, have to is used to talk about obligation which is decided by other sources or external power. It is often used to talk about impersonal obligation which is come from an objective viewpoint. It is important that we also use have to talk about a law or rule that cannot be changed. For example, in Bangladesh we have to drive in left side. That means there is a rule or law requiring you to drive in left side, and this rule or law decided by some external power or sources. In school you have to wear school dress. That means there is a rule about school dress, and we are obliged to wear school dress in school, and that is also come from an objective viewpoint. So these examples indicates subject of have to often obliged and forced to do a work or think by external power or sources. However, we use must to talk about obligation that we decide for ourselves or others. It is often expresses personal feelings or personal obligation which is come from an subjective viewpoint, because we know that personal feelings or personal experience is directly related with subjective viewpoint. For example, my coach said that you must be careful about your fitness. That means this is my coach viewpoint on me, and this is my coach viewpoint on me that I need more exercise to in order to get fit. However, this is not a rule or law. This is just my coach viewpoint and my coach feelings about me. I must do some more exercise. That means it is my point of view and my feelings that I require more exercise. This is not a law or rule. However, now it is time to talk about more details about have to and must by using some useful example. You must come. That means you are obliged to come, but not express a law or rule. But when you say you have to come, that means there is a rule requiring you to come. When your teacher said you must be come to the class regularly in order to get the lesson easy and comfortable, that means this is your teacher viewpoint and this is your teacher feeling. It is not a law or rule. This is your teacher viewpoint that it is necessary for you to come to the class regularly if you get the lesson easy and comfortable. But when your teacher said you have to come to the class regularly if you want to take part in the examination, that reflects a law or rule that cannot be changed. And this law or rule come from an objective viewpoint. This is not your teacher opinion. However, look an example. Must I wear the mask? That means, am I obliged to wear the mask? What do you think? That means this is not reflects a law or rule, and not asked for a law or rule. But when you say, do I have to wear the mask? That means, am I obliged to wear the mask? And is there a rule or law about wearing a mask? Yes, there is a rule and law about wearing a mask because of this coronavirus pandemic. However, when we talk about obligation, duty or necessity in case of past tense and future tense, we do use have to instead of need and must. That means in case of past tense and future tense, we frequently use have to instead of must and need. For example, in case of present tense, we use must. We must buy some fruits. We had to buy some fruits yesterday. We'll have to buy some fruits later. Basically, the negative forms of mustn't and don't have to have completely different meanings. Mustn't expresses prohibition to do a work or thing. For example, you mustn't drive. That means you are prohibited to drive and you are not allowed to drive. But when you say don't have to, that expresses an absence of obligation or necessity. For example, you don't have to drive. That means you are not obliged to drive. But you can if you want to. If we sum up this lesson, we can say must and have to has some important resemblance, but also some important difference in their use. Must and have to expresses obligation, but must expresses personal obligation, which is come from subjective viewpoint. Have to expresses impersonal obligation, which is come from objective viewpoint. Must is not expresses a law or rule. Have to expresses a law or rule that cannot be changed.